Well, I think Texas puts you in the arena, and if you get in the arena, you're going to have some people are going to have problems, and Texans are willing to get in there and mix it up. I think perhaps sometimes the greatness of the man is the capacity to overcome problems, and Texans are competitive, and they're willing to serve, and they're sometimes larger than life. They draw attention to themselves. Sometimes they can't help it. Sometimes that's their style. But it doesn't surprise me that there's a handful of Texans that are exposed because Texans are risk takers. In order to have gain in life, you got to take risk, and we do take risk. A lot of us do.
We've got a camera outside looking at the skyline of Dallas. You can't tell this, but at night there's one building even that's got green signs around it. Or green,
yeah, green.
Big green.
Used to have dollar signs.
But you see a lot of glass, and when you think of Dallas, you see this modern city.
Right.
When you look at that city, what do you think of?
I think of unfettered imaginations. I think of guts. I think of people who are unrestrained by old traditions, that are willing to build new. People that are kind of reaching for new horizons. I think of Texans are people who think big and act big.
Getting any trouble over this in the last several years?
Yeah, sure.
Now, why? What do you think the city learned anything, or the state learned anything?
Probably learned it, but probably won't listen to it, because Texans are big thinkers and big risk takers, and the bigger risk, the bigger the reward, and the bigger the risk, the bigger the bust.
Have you changed your thoughts at all?
Yeah, pretty good. I've always been a fairly conservative guy. I mean, I never really took the huge gamble in the oil business, never borrowed the mega money, and managed my money with little money I had pretty well. So not really, pretty conservative player. But there's some real estate and oil people around who probably have changed their ways. Just tremendous debt trying to hit the big, massive homer. I hope society has changed its ways. I mean, I hope this concept of leverage for the sake of greed has no longer exists, but you know darn well it won't. I mean, it'll be the next wave of people that hadn't learned their lessons coming along as well.
Should government do anything about it?
No. I think government ought to protect innocent people, depositors, stuff like that. I think government ought to make dadgum sure the next time it starts tinkering with financial institutions, it doesn't set a bunch of rules that set off a cavalier attitude about managing depositors' money, referring to the S&L crisis and the lax government involved there. But I don't think government ought to try to get in the way of an entrepreneur. I think it's a mistake, and I think the government ought not to laugh or cry on success or failure, entrepreneurial failure.
George W. Bush and no Junior.
Correct.
That make you mad when people say Junior?
Not really. That was kind of the tag they put on me. I was known as Junior during the campaign, and I'm probably one of these guys that had about 10 different names. W, George W.
How did you
Junior.
miss the H, by the way, the George H.W. Bush?
Well, it was one of those nice gestures of my old man. He didn't want me to have 5 names, George H.W. Bush Jr. That way I can apply for all sorts of government benefits. Because if you got 5 names, you can't. There's not enough slots. But if you've got 3 or 4, you can. And so he was thinking ahead.
Got about 3 minutes left. Look at your own personal future. Help us. Governorship 94, 98.
Could be. Well,
other things besides baseball?
Well, not right now. Short term would be the 92 presidential election.
Campaign?
You bet. You bet.
What would you like to do differently in 92 than you did in 88?
Live in Texas as opposed to Washington. And do some surrogate work, but not 6 stops a day the way I did it. But I'll be involved with it.
Does that stuff matter?
Surrogate, yeah, you bet. People, it's the way you rally the troops. It doesn't matter to switch the undecided voter. He's not going to, he can't see enough of them to make a difference. But the truth of the matter is, what does matter is to rally the troops in Texas or California, which is going to be a crucial electoral state, or Florida. We're pretty well positioned there. We got Jeb, my brother, down in Florida, and I'm in Texas. And I'm not suggesting that either of us can deliver our states, but we can be there to do the work, to go to Houston for the rally for the people that are going to man the phone banks, to get on the phone here in Dallas and to coordinate the 20 people necessary to do this or whatever it may be, and the same in California. It does matter. but it's not going to take, you know, Joe Smith out there wondering whether or not he needs to vote for whoever, Wilder or whoever's running against George Bush or not. He's going to have to make up his own mind based upon the barrage of information he's had. But it helps with the trenches. And then run the baseball deal and look for other business opportunities. I mean, I look, just hadn't found yet. I've got some capacity, time and energy-wise, to devote some energy to helping another company. But always keeping my eye on that political ball here in the state, helping the party, which I do whether or not I'm going to run or not. I mean, I just enjoy doing that. I like the involvement and help candidates. And there'll be a whole series of state representative and state senatorial races coming up that some old boy may need me out there in Gainesville, Texas, and off I'll go.
Toughest candidate for your dad to run against in '92?
Can't name it.
Nobody tough?
Not right now. But I'd never underestimate American politics, and the minute you take it for something for granted, you get whipped. But I mean, Albert Gore is not as qualified as Dan Quayle to be president. And Mario Cuomo is a northeastern liberal. The party's tried that for years, and that doesn't work because you got to win California, Texas, and Florida. I mean, I don't think you can do that. Wilder's a total unknown. No one's ever heard of him. Jesse Jackson, I think, scares people too much. I'm not sure who else there is.
Time's up. Any doubt in your mind whatsoever?
Not really, Brian. I know we've had a pretty tough month. Bill Clinton had, I guess, what was a good convention. Very little second guessing, at least in the national media. And as a result, for 4 consecutive weeks, there's been a, I guess, kind of a love affair with the fella. But now it's George Bush's turn to say what he believes in and where he's going to take the country. And I know my dad pretty darn well, and I know it's going to be a strong, positive message by a good, caring man, and people listen to it, so I'm very confident.
Did you?
No, I haven't. I don't read the New York Times very much. As you know, I live in Texas, and I spare myself of that. But if the implication is George Bush is not ready to run for the presidency, Maureen Dowd and the New York Times missed it again. He's ready to go. He is a tough competitor. I've seen it in his eyes, and for those who don't think he's got the energy and the desire to campaign hard for presidency have once again underestimated my good dad. So,
well, let me read.
I've been by George Bush's side. I've eaten dinner with him. I've talked to him. I know how intent he is upon getting reelected and governing for 4 more years. And this is a New York Times writer who's guessed about how he feels, didn't ask him. And so I can see it in his eyes. I know the man very well, and so, and we'll see. Come this convention, I think the American people will see a fighter, someone who is willing to defend a cause and a principle that is eminently fair for the working people of this country.
You know, in the last couple of months, you can't pick up a newspaper every couple of days, or not necessarily every couple of days, but your name comes up all the time. And it goes something like this. George W. Bush snuck into town last week, was in the White House, meeting with people, reconfiguring the White House staff. How much of that's true?
Oh, I think people give me a lot more credit than I deserve. I have been in Washington quite a bit, but that's to be just a loyal soldier. I'm a foot soldier for George Bush, and people ascribe all sorts of power, and it's only because, Brian, I've got direct access to the president. And if you have access to the president, people automatically assume that you're a very powerful fella. And but George Bush doesn't need his son telling him how to govern or what to do. Believe me, he is the most experienced, most knowledgeable, most professional political person in our circle. And he does like feedback. He likes to hear from what the folks are thinking out in Dallas, Texas, or in Arlington, Texas, or at Ranger Stadium. But he's got a pretty good handle on where he wants to take his campaign and who he wanted to run it. And so all the stories ascribing unbelievable power to me, really aren't true. I really don't. I think these guys totally irrelevant, frankly.
Well, he had a piece that's, he had a little drawing that showed a little plot of land that your father owns, and he suggests that it's all being done for tax purposes and that he's really evading taxes.
Yeah.
What do you say about that?
I say Gary Trudeau's full of it.
What was your reaction when a bunch of conservatives called for your father to step down, including George Will? We talked about George Will the last time he appeared.
I think George Will's irrelevant. to what George Bush thinks. The fact that George Will thinks George Bush ought to step down tells me nothing. And the other fella, mail artist, direct mail artist guy telling him to step down, he's irrelevant too. What matters is what the people think. The people who work for a living, the people who live out in the States, not the Beltway social gossipers, Brian, and you know that. And George Bush doesn't listen to those people. He listens to the people of America who pay taxes and who work. And those are the only ones that, that we try to pay attention to. So whether it be the cartoonists or the columnists or the second guessers or the people trying to make money off of politics, they don't matter to us.
You may not be able to see this. I'm holding up the Houston Post, and the headline is, "It's Clinton by 17% in the Texas poll."
Right.
What's the politics of a Houston Post, and what about this poll?
Well, I think the Post is reporting an accurate statement that that we're behind in Texas right now. But if you hold up the November 5th or whenever it's going to be Houston Post, it's going to say Bush wins Texas, as well as the country. We've been down 17 points before in our home state, and have battled back. But let's hold up the polls come September 1st and to get a real good sense of where this campaign is in Texas. But we'll carry Texas, and I feel very comfortable about that, Brian.
What's your